What if I told you that one political visit just quietly changed how the world sees an entire country, and almost nobody is talking about it the right way? Because what happened in Ireland today wasn't just another diplomatic trip, it was something much bigger. Something more personal. And maybe, something that signals a shift in global power that most people haven't fully noticed yet. So let me ask you this right from the start: why was Mark Carney welcomed in Ireland not like a politician, but like family? Think about that for a second. Crowds didn't just show up, they gathered. People didn't just watch, they followed. Local media didn't just cover the visit, they tracked his every move like something historic was unfolding. And in his ancestral hometown, people lined the streets, not out of obligation, but out of genuine connection. That's not normal. That's not how most political visits look. And here's where it gets even more interesting. While all of this was happening, something else became impossible to ignore. As Donald Trump continues to generate controversy across the global stage, raising questions about trade, alliances, and America's direction, Canada is increasingly being seen as something very different. Not louder. Not more powerful. But more stable. More predictable. More trustworthy. And one moment during this visit captured that shift perfectly.
It's been a long time since I've been given a poem. This may be the last poem I've given, or at least the last one that I'm going to want to read that I'm given. But a poem that I was given because I think it's instructive how the world views our country. And so just a few lines from Gary Reedy's poem. We look to Canada, as we've done before, to protect the hard lessons gleaned from the rubble, to reset the world as it slowly forgives, to defend civilized values, despite the struggle, so we can all resume living our sacred, ordinary lives. And that's what people want in Ireland, that's what people want in Canada, that's what people want around the world, is to live their ordinary lives as they see fit, without the intrusion of shocks from abroad. And that's what we're working towards.
During a public event, Mark Carney was presented with a poem. Now you might think, okay, just a symbolic gesture, but the language inside that poem was striking. It described Canada as a country people look toward during uncertain times. Let that sink in. Not because Canada dominates the global economy. Not because it's the biggest military power. But because it represents something rare right now: reliability. And here's the real question. When did stability become one of the most valuable currencies in global politics? For Canadian viewers, this isn't just a feel-good moment, it's a signal. A message about how the world is starting to see Canada differently. And maybe even more importantly, what role Canada could play moving forward. But here's where the story takes a strategic turn. Because while the emotional connection in Ireland was undeniable, Carney wasn't just there to celebrate heritage or recognition. He was there to deliver a very clear message about the future. And that message was simple, but powerful. Canada cannot rely on a single relationship anymore. Now think about the timing of that statement. This conversation is happening while Donald Trump continues questioning long-standing trade agreements, creating uncertainty around economic partnerships, and sending mixed signals about America's role with its allies. So what does Carney do? He doesn't respond with confrontation. He responds with diversification.
Despite what you mentioned in your preamble about what you've been able to accomplish on this leg of the trip, there has been criticism from the leader of the opposition saying that what Canada already has a trade deal with Ireland, and what you're doing on this leg of the trip is not at all helping Canadian workers whose jobs are affected by tariffs from the United States. I wanted to get your response to that.
Well, we have a couple of things. We have a trade deal with Ireland, but we don't have full ratification of the trade deal with Ireland. So one of the things that, and I want to commend the Taoiseach and the government for putting this in place, is that both houses of the Irish legislature have now ratified that deal. Now, ratification provides additional certainty, it provides additional mechanisms for the long term in terms of that. That's the first point. The second is that we are not satisfied with the status quo. Maybe the leader of the opposition is, but we're not satisfied with the status quo. We see a significant opportunity with Ireland, more broadly with the European Union, to deepen our commercial relationships with them. And I speak more in this regard with respect to the European Union than Ireland given Ireland's neutrality, but with the European Union, to broaden our security relationships, defense and security relationships. Ireland will be president of the European Union for the next starting from Canada Day. It's a crucial time in that regard, and they're putting the focus on, during that period of time, competitiveness. That means deeper commercial relationships is one aspect. Reducing red tape is another aspect as part of that. And it also putting a focus on security and values and the link between those. So it comes together at a time where there's an enormous opportunity. And I would remind that the scale of this economy, the European economy, is absolutely enormous. This is an economy of more than 400 million people. It's one of the richest economies, and it is underpenetrated by Canadian businesses. Now, one of the reasons why that is, in fact, you can do different analyses of this, but directionally, the opportunity for Canada in Europe is as big as if not bigger than any other economy. Now, to explain to the Leader of the Opposition, who will try to clip that and not follow through, add this. Opportunity means what more? What more can you get? How more can we grow from where we are today? And the fact is, it can be measured in hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity that we have not, as a country, fully taken advantage of. And by deepening our relationships, by making it simpler to do business in Ireland, in Europe, we create enormous opportunity for Canadian jobs. I will just underscore two recent examples. One, OpenText 2 days ago, 100 million investment here, which ultimately benefits a great Canadian company in integration. And then the $18 billion purchase of Airbus planes manufactured in Quebec. That's because of our fluid relationship with Europe, our seamless relationship with Europe, that we can be that competitive in it. And there are many, many more examples of that.
Europe, he pointed out, is one of the largest economic regions in the world. The opportunities are massive. And yet, Canada has barely scratched the surface of what's possible there. So here's a question for you. What happens when a country starts expanding its partnerships at the exact moment another major power is pulling back? That's not just strategy, that's positioning. And if you listen closely to everything Carney said during this trip, one phrase kept coming up again and again. Never rely on a single option. It sounds simple. Almost obvious. But in global politics, that idea can be the difference between strength and vulnerability. Because countries that put all their eggs in one basket eventually find themselves exposed when that basket starts to shake. And according to Carney, that's exactly the risk Canada needs to avoid. Whether he was talking about artificial intelligence, trade, economic security, or international partnerships, the message stayed consistent. More partners. More opportunities. More resilience.
Well, again, you're going to hear me say this over and over again because it's true. It is never a good idea to have one option. It is never a good idea to have one option. You know, if I took one lesson from the financial crisis, is we had a series of financial institutions which were linked up in one way, and as soon as one of them started having problems, you feared that everybody was about to have problems. And I say this in Ireland, which suffered greatly from that. We have similar things in terms of model risk. If you only have one large language model and a reliance on that, you can have it in intelligence, infrastructure, and other aspects. So how do we move from where we are today, where there's lots of promise around this, but how do we move from where we are today, where there is redundancy, there's diversification from our perspective? I'll take two more quickly. I'll try and be quick. Because you've got the sun, and I worry about that. You invested it. But so how do we diversify and build that out? For us, that means that partnering. Again, this is where it comes in, why it's important. So we have the capability, not just ourselves, but especially ourselves, plus a few other like-minded, to build some redundancy in that system. And this is a much longer conversation, obviously. But that's part of the reason why we're so focused on building out these relationships with the French. President Macron and I spent 45 minutes on this issue in quite some depth on Friday night. It's been part of the discussions here. It'll be part of the discussions with the European presidents on Monday afternoon, I guess, whenever I'm seeing them tomorrow, I guess. So to be continued, I'm happy to have the discussion. I guess I would just leave it with this point, which is that the situation we're in collectively right now with Mythos and Fable and is something that can happen with over-reliance on certain models or certain protections. That doesn't ascribe nobody's done anything wrong in the situation. But we will have done something wrong if we just accept this, don't take the lesson, don't build out and diversify. And you can make an analog to Canada's overall economic situation. We will be doing something wrong if we just sit here and say, to go back to, I think, the very first question, well, why would you come and deepen your trade relationship with Europe? Well, because we don't want to have just one big trade relationship. That's better for Canadians.
And here's where things get even more interesting. At one point, this philosophy wasn't just directed outward, it was used to challenge Canada's own political opposition. A direct contrast between what he sees as forward-thinking strategy and what he considers naive reliance on limited options. So now the question becomes, is this just smart policy, or is it a fundamental shift in how Canada operates on the global stage? Because the visuals coming out of Ireland tell a powerful story. The crowds. The emotional welcome. The sense of connection. The intense media attention. This wasn't a routine diplomatic stop. This was something deeper. A reminder that Canada's influence doesn't begin and end in North America. And right now, those international relationships might be more important than ever before.
Good evening to you, Teresa. As you take us through this remarkable day for the region and, of course, Ahagaur, tell us what's happening this evening.
Absolutely remarkable day, Ray. You're so right. Well, we've moved from Ahagaur to Westport, and there are hundreds of people gathered outside the Town Hall Theatre here in Westport, hoping for a glimpse of the Canadian Prime Minister. Maybe he'll shake their hands and greet them, maybe a selfie, when he emerges from a civic reception in an hour or so. That reception is being hosted, of course, by Mayo County Council, in the honour of the man who describes himself as fiercely proud of his Mayo roots, and says Mayo is, he describes it as part of who he is. Now, he will be gifted this evening with a special commemorative history of the Carney and the Moran clans, a very forensic, carefully researched 28-page document with lots of wonderful photographs as well, showing his history, and that's been put together by members of the Westport Historical Society. I think this has been a very, very successful day.
But let's take a step back for a second. Because there's a bigger picture forming here. On one side, you have Donald Trump continuing to dominate headlines with bold, controversial moves, questioning alliances, reshaping trade narratives, and creating uncertainty about what comes next. On the other side, you have Mark Carney quietly building relationships, strengthening partnerships, and positioning Canada for a future that looks very different from the past. Two completely different approaches. Two completely different strategies. So let me ask you, which one do you think the world is responding to right now? Because if Ireland is any indication, the answer might surprise a lot of people. And this is where things get even more intriguing. Because what happened in Ireland wasn't just personal for Carney, it was deeply political. Every speech, every interaction, every message, they all pointed in the same direction. Canada must expand. Canada must adapt. Canada must prepare for a world where depending too heavily on any one country is no longer safe. And that idea alone raises another important question. Are we entering a new era where middle powers like Canada become more influential simply because they are stable? Because if global uncertainty continues to rise, then reliability becomes power. And if reliability becomes power, then countries like Canada suddenly become much more important than many people expected. Now think about that in the context of what's happening globally right now. Trade tensions, geopolitical uncertainty, shifting alliances, economic unpredictability. In that kind of environment, who do countries turn to? The loudest voice, or the most dependable one? That's exactly the image being built here. And whether you agree with Carney's approach or not, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. Canada is being seen differently. More countries are paying attention. More countries are open to working together. And moments like the one in Ireland, they don't happen by accident. They happen when perception starts to shift. And we are here every single day breaking it all down for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.